Tensions have been extremely high since yesterday's entire wacko debacle, and all of that carried into today during question period in Parliament. Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another video, everybody. Before we get into it, I do want to encourage everyone to smash the like button and subscribe if you haven't yet already. It does really help grow the channel. Justin Trudeau is doing his absolute best to throw every little piece of shit stain at the wall to see if it sticks, and Pierre Poilievre is here to stand strong and debunk every single claim. It's almost like the truth prevails and people are seeing through the lies that the Prime Minister is throwing out there. I've gathered a highlight reel for today for you guys, but before we do get into all this amazing heated debate, I do have a message from today's sponsor. This video is brought to you by Private Internet Access. We've teamed up together and are willing to offer my audience 83% off using the code House of Canada, which can be found linked down in the description or the pinned comment below. There's no easy way of putting this. Justin Trudeau is trying to censor the internet and he's trying to implement a digital ID. And the only way that you can actually really protect yourself online is through a VPN. And my go-to VPN is Private Internet Access. Now, those who don't know what a VPN is, it acts as a way to encrypt your data, which means that all the big tech companies, including the government, can't access your information. Your information bounces around from IP address to IP address, and it doesn't just act as a way to protect yourself, but it's also a way to access content which you wouldn't regularly be able to get because of geolocation restrictions, such as Netflix or Disney. I know a lot of people in Canada want to access the American stuff, and the only real way to do that is with a VPN. And it is so user-friendly with Private Internet Access. You can have it on your phone, your tablet, all of your devices, your computers, etc. Just be sure to use House of Canada as your code, which should be linked down in the description or the pinned comment below to get yourself 83% off with Private Internet Access. Thank you, Private Internet Access, for sponsoring today's video.
2 years ago, the Prime, after having doubled the rent,
something's off today,
mortgage payments, and doubled the needed down payment for a home, the Prime Minister promised in his budget that he would double home building. Here we are, 2 years later, and home building is down 8%. His housing agency says it will be down next year and the year after that. If it cost him $89 billion in programs to bring home building down, how much would he have to spend to bring it up?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, our housing plan is focused on fairness for every generation. We, over the coming years, will be unlocking 3.8 million new homes by cutting red tape, by rezoning, by lowering the costs of home building, by using public lands and vacant office buildings to build affordable housing for Canadians. We will be reviving the dream of home ownership for young Canadians by making it easier to save up for a tax-free down payment and giving renters credit for their monthly rent payments towards the ability to get a mortgage. We've put forward the most comprehensive, ambitious housing plan this country has ever seen.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
The only thing it doesn't do is build homes. Since he made the most recent promise in 2022 to double housing construction, the number of builds is actually down and expected to continue to drop next year and the year after that, according to his own housing agency. Yet, he says we should all be assured because once again, he's spending tens of billions of dollars on the problem that he created. So can you tell us, in what year will home building actually rise? Which year?
The Right Honourable Prime
This
Minister.
is weird,
Speaker,
folks.
we know well that the federal government has an important role to play in ensuring housing starts across the country and ensuring the opportunities for Canadians to buy their first home, to move forward up the equity ladder. These are things that we know we have a role to play in. But we are not alone in that, Mr. Speaker, which is why we are challenging and encouraging municipalities and provinces to also step up with ambition in our national housing home building plan. This is why we're putting incentives on the table. We're putting investments in the pockets of municipalities, including with our Accelerator Fund. There is more to do, but we will be doing it in partnership.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
That's what he's been saying for 9 years. And the result has been double the rent, double the mortgage payment, double the down payment. And just this week, a survey showed that 72% of Canadians who don't own a home believe they never will. Canada was not like this before this Prime Minister, and surely it won't be like this after he's gone. The Prime Minister a comment on what it's like to be the only Prime Minister in history to deprive an entire generation of home ownership.
Yo, this has a weird, depressive feeling to it.
The government that was in place before I became Prime Minister had a housing minister who is now the leader of the opposition, in a government that explicitly said that the federal government had no role to play and no responsibility towards building affordable housing across this country. So for 10 years, there was very little, there was almost no federal involvement in building homes across this country. We turned that around starting in 2017, and we will continue to invest, to create opportunities, to create fairness for millennials and Gen Z so that they can buy.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Well, he did turn it around, Mr. Speaker. 9 years is obviously too long for him because he's starting to attribute to the previous government words he said himself.
Yeah.
He was the one who said the federal government is not responsible for home housing construction or affordability. That is after he doubled the cost. When I was housing minister, we built 89,000 apartments at an average rent of $973. Since then, the rent has doubled, the mortgage payment has doubled, the needed down payment has doubled. So with all this failure, why is he doubling down?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, our Housing Accelerator program, our comprehensive plan to build more homes, to make sure that Canadians can see themselves in home ownership once again, is exactly what we are continuing to invest in. Yes, I pointed out that we cannot build homes alone, that we need partners in the provinces and municipalities. But I never denied that the federal government needs to continue to act on housing. That's why we've done that since 2017. That's why we're continuing to do it now. We need to make sure that young Canadians have opportunities their parents and grandparents have. That's what we're stepping up for. That's what he refuses to do.
The Prime Minister has already doubled the national debt, adding more to our debt than all previous Prime Ministers in our history combined, with the Bloc support, which has voted for $500 billion in budget allocations. The leader of the Bloc has never voted against a single one. Today we learn that the Prime Minister will continue increasing our debt by $300 billion. This will increase interest rates on mortgages by how much? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, we know very well that the plan from the opposition leader is austerity and cuts in services that Canadians need. But on this side of the House, we recognize that Canada is in one of the best fiscal positions in the G7 and the entire world. We have the lowest deficit in the G7. We have the best debt to GDP ratio. And we have the third largest AAA credit rating economy in the world. We are there to invest responsibly because a confident country invests in its people and in its future.
Then I have Chef.
The Leader of the Opposition. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister's decision with the support of the Bloc to double the national debt means that we are paying $54.1 billion on interest alone on the debt. That is more than we spend on healthcare.
So much debt.
It's the total of GST. So every time Canadians buy something, the GST simply pays rich bankers. Why is he wasting our money on rich bankers instead of on services to Canadians? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. On the contrary, Mr. Speaker, the waste that the Conservatives accuse us of is wasting our money on childcare centres, on more childcare spaces. They accuse us of wasting money on dental care. They accuse us of wasting money on investments in Northvolt, Volkswagen, Stellantis, and Honda. to ensure there are careers for generations to come in a greener economy. They accuse us of wasting money by investing in seniors to protect their old age security. They accuse us of wasting because they just want austerity and cuts. But, Mr. Speaker, we will continue to invest responsibly in Canadians. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition. Mr. Speaker, families are already living in austerity. The government is living in abundance. People are poor. The government is rich. The more the government spends, the more things are expensive. For example, interest rates are high, and spending and loans from the government are making things go higher. The Department of Finance's public servants, have they told the Prime Minister how much this will increase interest rates on families' mortgages by borrowing another $300 billion? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, we know very well that Canadians are facing an affordability crisis. That is why we are there with solutions for them. We've reduced the cost of daycare by half throughout the country. Aside from Quebec, where we've invested in more childcare spaces, we're there to invest in dental care for the most vulnerable seniors, for youth as well last year. We're there to invest in our students, in jobs for the future. We are there to invest in Canadians. The Leader of the Opposition is proposing cuts and austerity.
You can see the super chat.
Ideological approach.
You can see a green tinge in her glasses.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
The Prime Minister is not worth the cost of debt interest. He doubled our national debt, adding more debt than all previous Prime Ministers combined. And now we learn in his new budget bill that he's going to seek another $300 billion of debt, money that he will borrow out of the economy. That's equal to over 10% of our GDP, which will surely put upward pressure on interest rates. How much will all this government binge borrowing add to the mortgage payment of the average family?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, allow me once again to set the facts straight. Canada has one of the strongest fiscal positions of any country in the world. Certainly the lowest deficit in the G7, the best debt to GDP ratio in the G7, and it's continuing to decrease. And we are the third largest economy in the world with a AAA credit rating, the top credit rating by the agencies that look at fiscal sustainability of governments. All that is on the backdrop of further investments. We're making generational investments to support Canadians. Contrast with the ideology of the Conservatives, which is to leave Canadians to fend for themselves, cuts and austerity.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, we actually have the highest mortgage debt of any country in the G7, and by far higher as a share of our economy than the Americans had during the mortgage meltdown. Now, interest rates are higher, and families risk losing their homes. Government deficits push inflation and interest rates higher. That makes the problem worse. So once again, how much will $300 billion of yet more debt add in mortgage payments for the average Canadian family? How much?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the Leader of the Opposition is mixing different factors that are facing Canadians. Mortgages are high for Canadian families, and therefore the Canadian government is choosing to invest in measures that are going to support Canadian families. I talked to a family from Burlington who actually saw their mortgage payments go up because of the rise in global interest rates, while at the same time as their child care fees were cut by
She's looking down at her phone again.
This government made. We're going to continue to be there for Canadians while the Conservative leader wants cut.
Am I imagining shit, folks?
Mr. Speaker, the government has a responsibility.
Oops. Okay.
I apologize to the Leader of the Opposition. I miscounted in terms of the questions that we're keeping track. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, inflation and higher interest rates, the costs Canadians pay for the spending that the Prime Minister told them was free. It's not free. Nothing is free. Every dollar he spends comes out of the pockets of Canadians directly through taxes or indirectly through inflation and interest rates. Now he wants to do another $300 billion of binge borrowing. Will he put aside that radical scheme and instead accept my common sense plan to fix the budget with a dollar-for-dollar law so we can bring down interest rates and inflation for Canadians?
Here. The Right Honourable Prime
All right,
Minister.
let's see if there's a green tinge in her glasses if she looks down.
Responsibly, we still have one of the top AAA rated economies in the world. Our fiscal plan is sustainable and responsible. However, the Conservative leader still wants to make cuts to programs, cuts to our military, cuts to the initiatives.
She's looking down.
Canadians across the country. The things that we are doing are helping Canadians grow for the future in a responsible way, and that's why we're seeing inflation come down and interest rates will be coming down, I am sure, in the coming months.
100% she's going through the comments. 100% she's going through the comments, folks. That's the end of the video, ladies and gentlemen. On your way out, I'd like to encourage you guys to smash the like button, subscribe if you haven't yet already, and one last thank you to Private Internet Access for sponsoring this video. I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye for now.